Hello. Happy Sunday, you guys. All right, we'll get started in just a minute. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me okay, if you guys can see me okay. I am still getting our second camera set up. You guys are definitely going to want to see an overhead and a full view of me at the same time. So I'm going to get our second camera set up. And this will just help a little bit because one of the things that's quirky with learning any of these knit patterns or any kind of tutorial like that is that you really want to see the knot work, the pattern, my hand movement. So it's so much easier when you can see two angles, and it's so much easier in video than it is in a blog tutorial or written tutorial or still photos. All of that can be very, very challenging. So this is the best way to learn it, and we are making hand knit poof pillows. You do not need any knitting needles for this. You are just going to use your hands. Whoop. Y'all, I know how to spell. Okay, let's try that again. And it says my mic is muted, but I can hear myself echoing like crazy. Look at that. All right, let me know if the sound is okay, you guys. I want to make sure that you don't hear the echo that I hear. So I'm just going to check the chat really quick. All right. I hope you guys can hear me okay. If not, oh, great. Okay, thank you so much, Facebook user. If for some reason the sound gets a little bit quirky at any point, I will record this as a regular video, not as a live video, just to be able to make that a little bit better for you guys. All right, so here's what we're making today. We're making these really fun poof pillows. You can make these in any size. The size that I have right here, this is on the small side. This is gonna be good for about one of these merino wool or faux merino wool bundles. This is about 26 yards. 26 yards comes out to about this. You can go way bigger. You can make ottoman size. You can make like a kind of almost like a table, you know, or put your feet up on it, or just like have it as like an accessory in the corner, something that you sit on. If you make something of that size, you're going to be talking about, 8 bundles. We've got one right here, maybe as few as 5, but probably more like 8. When you're using that many bundles, you're definitely going to be thinking, even in supplies, even if you aren't just buying at retail, you're making it yourself, you're going to be spending over $100, maybe $150. This is a really great project for probably closer to like $20, maybe $25 if you buy all the supplies yourself. This is a part of our June Craft and Style subscription box. So this box also comes with crochet needles, and it's like a little cute little travel kit. It comes with yarn, so you can learn crochet, you can learn arm knitting. You get a bunch of really cute accessories as well. Craft and Style subscription box. You can grab it right here. And you can also check out our website, check out other tutorials. Everything is at your fingertips. So please feel free. There's a ton of free resources. So I hope you really enjoy those. It's not something where we're just a shop. It's definitely a community of crafting and having fun and making stuff. So this one is a little bit messy. Like if you see right here, right down here, this one is a little bit messy. And the reason that this one is messy is because for y'all that know me, I have this very sweet dog that has major separation anxiety. And she just loses her mind when I leave her at the office by herself for even 5 minutes, which is what I did. And she went crazy and ate all my yarn. I got back from USPS and I was like pulling fluff out of her mouth. And I'm like, awesome. Good job there. So watch out for that. So I'm going to set this to the side. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this right over here just so you guys can really see a clear view of everything. I definitely want you guys to be able to see this. Okay, so again, we've got about 26 yards right here. We're making a pillow size. You don't need knitting needles for this project. We're just going to use our arms. And that's part of what I love about this project. It's a really great intro to knitting project that doesn't require needles. Now, the only other supply that I do have is I have these bags of fluff right here. Now, whenever you're using fluff to stuff these, it's nice to, maybe have it in bags or have it encased in something. You can take it out and you can just use the fluff on its own. But when you have the fluff on its own like this, you might see it poke through in between your stitches. So you're also welcome to, use like a pillow that has a pillowcase. Use some old fluff that maybe is like chunkier. Whatever works for you. Okay, so let's see. We want to see it here. We want to see it there. Let's see if we can move this over. Kind of. I might need to, we'll do this as a live and then I'll just film this separately as a standalone video. That way you guys can really see all the angles and we can always flip back and forth between the live video and the pre-recorded video. That's always a great way to learn a project. So one thing I've noticed with this project, if you check out any of the YouTube videos, there are 2, 3, 4 different people that do this as a tutorial. Bananas, absolutely bananas. Some people just leave out a ton of steps. Some people, overcomplicate it. Some people kind of almost like make mistakes and you're like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. But when they finish their project and it comes to an end, it looks amazing. So that leads me to believe that you don't necessarily need to do everything perfectly for this to turn out beautiful. So you guys just, is that my cursor? Sorry. Okay, there we go. Oh my God, computers, y'all. So just go for it. Another thing that's really great about this is if you want to undo anything, you can undo this project and start again. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a tail. I want my tail to be at least maybe 18 inches. Maybe the smallest amount I would want it to be is 14 inches. You could have it up to 24 inches. Now, the reason that I say this, my point is that it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to measure it, but we want to leave a tail at the end. So here's the end of my yarn. Here is my first knot. My first knot is going to be a slip knot. So to make that slip knot, I'm going to cross it over and I'm going to make that loop right here. And now see how I have a knot right here, and then here's my tail, here's my working yarn. I'm just gonna pull both of those together and tighten this a bit. Now, one thing that I wanna do is I wanna make sure that I still have a decent amount for my tail. I don't wanna, like, completely pull this away from my tail, right? I still want that length. So that's why you see me kind of adjusting this as I go to make sure I still have plenty of tail. Now, another thing that's really important, you guys, and we'll do this again. So we've done this little slip knot. We're gonna do our first section. I'm gonna undo it. We're gonna do it a second time. Once you get these first few steps, you guys will really have the gist of the entire project. But these first few steps are definitely the thing that is the hardest to kind of understand, hardest to learn. And now, hopefully, you guys can see from this that watching it and seeing a video is really the best way to learn this. So, when you see it multiple times, it really reinforces it. Okay, so we've got our slip knot. And then the other thing that's really important about this slip knot is we want it to be about the size that we want all of our stitches to be. So right here, this is a little bit big, so I'm just gonna kind of adjust it. And I wanna keep this stitch the same size as all of the stitches, all of the rest of the stitches that I make. So right here, this looks like a good size. I don't want them to be too big. I don't want these loops to be too tall because that's gonna create more space in between every single stitch. And then you're gonna see more of the inside, more of that fluff, and less of the outside. Okay, once we have this, then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip this over because I'm right-handed. Now I'm gonna take my working yarn, here's my tail, and I'm going under, through, and out. Ooh, let me go up a little bit. I want this to be the same size as the stitch beneath it. Now I'm gonna keep doing that same movement. Under, through, and back out. Trying to keep every stitch the same size. I'm going to make 10 stitches. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? And you can just count as you go, or you can count them at the end. If you accidentally do too many, it's totally okay. You can just pull one out. Now, one thing that's really important, I'm handling this very gently. Any kind of merino wool or faux merino wool is going to be really soft, really delicate. You can actually, let me see if I can do it on here. Yeah, you can actually take pieces and literally just like pull it apart. So you see how I did that right here? So we want to be really careful as we're working with our merino wool, faux merino wool, to not break it as we go. All right, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. All right, and this is number 10. Okay, So here's where it gets a little bit quirky, okay? And so this one, I want you guys to see over here. I'll slide it back over. I'll do it again. So what we want to do is I'm going to pull this 10th stitch slightly long. Now we want to loop this together, but I don't want to loop it from that 10th stitch. I want to push this in to the 9th stitch, just like so. Then I'm going to turn this upside down. And what we're going to do is we're going to start our second row. Now let's try that again. Undoing what I did. I'm having stream condition issues. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. I just got a little notification that my Wi-Fi is not doing as well as it usually does. Usually the Wi-Fi here is super great. All right. So let's count our stitches one more time. So starting here is our first stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, wait, we're upside down. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What happened? Did I pull it out too much? Must have pulled it out too much. Oh well, let's fix it. All right, now we've got 10 again. Not sure what happened there, you guys. Maybe that's more than what we had before. I don't really know. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to link not the last stitch. Oh yeah, I see that picture quality is really bad, you guys. Well, we'll just get through today and then we'll do this again as a more professional looking video. Totally okay, totally happens. Let's see, which side am I on? Here we go. So I'm making that loop. I do need to go ahead and flip this over. Now here's our 10th. So we're looping this into the 9th stitch right here. And pull that tail all the way through. So we still have our 10th stitch nice and open like that. Let's see. All right, now what we're going to do is we're actually going to continue. Let me slide it back because I feel like this camera is a little blurry. This camera is a little bit clearer. What we're going to do is we're going to continue to make these 10 stitches around in a circle. So it's going to start to come out like a starburst. We're going to keep kind of forming that up so that it creates a sphere. And what we want to do is we're going to create the same 10 loops all the way around. And we're going to be using the kind of middle part of these loops. And I'm doing the same thing, right? So I'm just going out like so. Now remember your second row, we want each of these loops to be about the same size as those original loops. So let's slide on over. This is a little bit less blurry now. Wish there's something I could do about it, you guys. Now again, we want 10 loops. So each time we go around in a circle like this, we want it to be the same number of loops as the row before. So it's not going to change. We're not building a pattern like you would with some knitting projects. Instead, what we're doing is we're doing the same thing over and over again. Be gentle with it. Again, remember that I mentioned that this type of yarn or this type of wool is quite soft. It's easy to tear, so we always want to be gentle. Now, see how I'm saying that we're making almost like this little starburst kind of pattern? It's exactly what we want. And again, we're using these middle pieces. We're not using the top. We're not using the bottom. We're using these pieces that are in the middle. And then from here, we just keep going. Now, what we want to do is continue this pattern until we start to get low on this yarn right here, our working yarn. And then once we get low on our working yarn, then we're going to start to seal this pattern. That's going to be our next step. But hopefully you guys can see that all of this comes together pretty quickly. This is not one of those projects that's going to take many hours, many weeks, many months. This is much faster than your ordinary knitting project. And you don't need needles. And it's pretty beginner friendly. And you end up with something that's like usable. We have like a little pillow. You could make multiple pillows. Again, you could use this pattern to make something that's even bigger, like an ottoman, or like the type of ottoman that you can like place your laptop on, or put your feet up on, or even like throw in the corner to sit on when you have like extra guests, and you want to watch a movie. Now, another thing is as you count all of your loops, if for any reason you've made any mistakes, you can undo it. So let's just take a quick look at that. Let me just undo this last little loop. So here's my last loop right here. See, I can just pull it right back out. I can make that loop, and I can pull it right back out. Now we just keep going. Now make sure it's really easy, and I notice that I'm doing this a little bit. It's almost normal as you're making your rows to accidentally start to make those loops bigger and bigger. Try to keep them even. You want them even with that very first row that you made. I did not do a time check on this tutorial before I started it today, and I'm like, I'm not 100% that I can get through all of this in an hour, but now that we're actually doing it, I think we're gonna be fine. I think we're gonna be able to complete this from beginning to end, all in an hour. So see how I still have my tail right here? What's really helpful is if you go ahead and just kinda, like, tuck that into the center just really loosely, that way it doesn't get in the way. You'll know where the beginning is because you can just pull it right back out, but what we don't want is to accidentally tangle it into the knot work that we're doing or accidentally, lose it or just not be able to find it. So let's take a quick look over here. So you guys see how it's like coming to a starburst or it's starting to look like a starburst? And we just keep going. Again, we continue this process until we have not very much left over here. Another thing too is that we we want to end on our very first loop. So for that reason, at some point when you get closer to finishing this project, you are going to want to know where the tail is. Each loop, again, I'm just going under, through, and then maybe you guys see how I'm kind of pulling that a little bit tighter, and that's going to make these stitches look a little bit more even. Now, sometimes when you get a big yarn bundle like this, you end up with having like an end or it just splits in packaging. It's totally okay. Like if for some reason this is cut, or if you're making a big one, you can just tie the end to another end, tuck it in so you won't be able to see it, and just keep going. If you're using different colors, it's a great way to transition between 2 different colors, and you can start that second color anywhere around your circle, and it's not gonna look like a spiral, it's not gonna look weird, it's not gonna look unprofessional, it's just gonna look like a beautiful, kinda seamless circle of different colors. Now, whenever we're starting to enclose our poof pillow, we're gonna go back to our tail first. We're gonna close that side off. Then we're gonna stuff it with fluff. Then we're gonna seal this open side that we're working from right now. Now, hopefully you kind of get a sense of this being pretty relaxing and definitely not anything that you have to pay super close attention to. So this is the type of thing that like if you want to do this while you're watching a movie, if you want to hang out with friends, you can absolutely do that. And we just keep going around. Now, as we're starting to go around, this is maybe our fourth or fifth time around in the circle. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're in our fifth time around. You guys can start to see that pattern forming. So as you work, it'll start to make sense. It'll start to take shape. Again, just always go back to every stitch being about the same size. And that's really going to help. You guys, now is a really great time. If you want to let me know in the chat, what are you guys doing right now? Are you enjoying your Sunday? As we're starting to get bigger, you guys might notice that I'm actually like I had some little cute little decorations like this over in the corner of the table, and I'm starting to move things out of the way. So you can see that this is like getting bigger. It's definitely harder for me to like position every single knot directly under that camera. So if you guys take a look right over here, we've got our beautiful starburst, our almost snowflake looking shape, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I even need to move my yarn around. All of that is very normal. Now, as I'm making this poof pillow for I guess this is the third time that I've made one of these within the last couple of weeks. One thing that I'm noticing now more than I ever have in the past is part of what's important about our stitch work is that here's my loop, and then here's my next loop, the loop that I just did. Part of what's so important is to pull this nice and tight. So let me show you that one more time. So here's our loop. This right here is going to be our next loop. So this piece is going to go underneath through here to make that loop. Now watch this part of the wool right now. So underneath and through to make that loop. Now what I do is I kind of pull right here so that this looks like a braid, just like it would in your hair. And then I pull this back a little bit to make it a little bit smaller and make it a little bit more even with that last loop. So let's do that one more time, you guys. So here I've got that braid pattern. And so these two pieces, I want to be nice and tight. I want to keep that pattern intact. So I'm going to go underneath, pull my loop through. Now I'm holding on to the previous loop pulling this tighter. And then stretch it out on our working side to make this loop size even with the loop that's next to it. Let's do that one more time. Here's our next loop. Let's slide this over so you can see them both. Here's our previous loop. Here's our next loop. Underneath and through. This we want to be the same size as all of these. This we want to be the same size as this. This we want it to be kind of intact, seamless, look like a braid. So I'm pulling that together. Pulling the right side out a little bit. There we go. And we just keep going. So let me know, you guys, let me know what you're doing on your Sunday. Let me know if you're having a lovely day. I see that there's not a ton of people here, which means that Sunday at 11 is probably not the best time for you guys, but this is a makeup date. If you remember, I had mentioned that I was out of town. And so this is the first time we had a chance to make up this particular workshop. Now, one thing you guys might notice is that you can like end up with like little bits in your fluff. This is just from kind of dragging it around on your table. Doesn't matter how clean your table is, sometimes it just ends up there. It can also end up in there from the packaging, something in shipping. If you see anything like that, you just go ahead and grab it, pull it right out. You can use tweezers or a toothpick or anything like that to pull it out. Another thing you guys are going to notice is as you get bigger and bigger, these loops are going to feel farther and farther apart, and you almost have to stretch your mind to understand where that next loop is. Something that's really helpful is to just look for that braid pattern and remember that your next loop is going to go right underneath that braid pattern, and your job is going to be to kind of pull that back together. So see how this is really far apart right here? And so my job is to make that loop and pull it back together. So I'm just unwinding a little bit more as I go. And I'm getting pretty close to wanting to stop, not quite there yet, but I want to keep my eye on what's left in this bundle right here so that I can make sure to have enough of a tail on that end to seal it to make sure that it closes, right? Because once we put that fluff inside of it, like let's think about it right now. If I stopped right now, then how would I put my fluff inside? How are these going to attach to each other? So that's really our last step, right? So that's why I want to make sure that I'm aware of how much of this I have left. Now, I will tell you what, our last workshop on Thursday was air plant care. I cannot even tell you, and it's not because I'm more familiar with gardening or air plants than I am with knitting or making pillows, but just the nature of plant care, it is so much easier on screen. It is so much easier to teach than this. This is definitely one of those things that it's really the seeing it visually is the thing that helps and not so much my words, but finding the right words to express these loops where they go is really, really challenging. So, if any of this is hard for you when you first start, do not worry about that. There is nothing wrong with that. If you're good at this, like if you just look at this and you're like, oh, I got it, like impressed. Very, very impressed. We're getting there, you guys. It's happening. You guys drop it in the chat. Tell me what you guys are going to do for the rest of the day. Tell me what color of yarn you want to use for the pillow that you make. I will drop in the chat, by the way. Or actually, you know what I'll do is on YouTube, in the video description, I'll add a couple of links of some tutorials that I do like for making these poof pillows. Again, most of the tutorials that I've seen could use a little bit of improvement, but there are a couple that I really liked. There's one in particular that I really liked. And I'm just going to walk over to the camera, walk over to my computer, and make sure my screen doesn't go to sleep. The software that I use, they swore to me that your computer will only go to sleep when you're recording if you don't have it plugged in, but they are wrong because my computer is still going to sleep even with it plugged in. The video is full view, it shows that it's active. I think their software is just not that amazing. Okay, now is probably a good time to figure out where my tail is. because I'm getting, well, let's see. I think I can do a little bit more. But nonetheless, we do want to be aware of that. Ooh, see, now we found the end. So once you start to get closer to the end, what I like to do is just kind of toss it behind me. It's a good way to hold on to it without it getting in your way. Now my loops are starting to get almost like a little bit tangly over here. So if you have any trouble figuring out which one is your previous loop, just try to remember that pattern. Right here, this is gonna look like a spiral, and then you're gonna have a piece that almost looks like it's kind of going underneath, and then your loop is gonna come out from that top, and you just pull it down, and you have like a little hole right there. Whenever you wanna find your tail, what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip this back over, and now you guys look at how beautiful it is on this side. Look at how even all those stitches look. So pretty. All right, so our tail is right here. So let's see, it's the one that I'm working on right now. So I think I can go around one more time. So now I'm going to start to count. So I want to get back to this spot right here. So you guys start to count these as you go around. Whatever number you're working with. Again, we're working with 10. If you guys are working with more, just make sure you start to count it out once you get to this spot. Now let's see. It might be here. Shazam! All right. Now let's go ahead and tie off that center part. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna stuff it and we're gonna seal it up. Now let's do a little quick time check. Make sure we're doing okay time-wise. 11:50. Okay, we're doing good, you guys. Okay, great. I definitely respect your time, and I know when we plan these 1-hour workshops, the last thing that I want to happen is we run over in time and you're expecting to go have lunch with friends or brunch or something, and you feel like you have to stay and wait. Again, replays are available, but we are gonna be able to make it through, so that's great. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our tail. Now it's hard to figure out the starting point, but what we're gonna do, and this is actually already pretty tight right here, which is nice. But what we wanna do is make this hole even smaller. And what we can do is just rather than making new loops, we're sealing it. So we have the end right here, and we're gonna pull it through these loops. I'm going under, over. Every single loop that's on the inside. Under, over. And this is gonna start to make that hole smaller and smaller. Under, over. Every single loop, right along the edge. Once your tail gets really short to where you can't go through these loops anymore very easily, we're just gonna tuck it right into the center. So I'm probably gonna make one more loop, and then we're gonna tuck it in. And see how I'm like really fighting to find that hole? It's because our yarn is so soft. It's really normal, so don't worry about that at all. So then see, I'm just gonna tuck it in right there. And one thing you guys might be able to see from this overhead, like you see how this stitch is a little bit bigger and like this stitch is a little bit smaller. What you can do is just start to kind of stretch it and even it out, and you can make those bigger stitches, smaller stitches go away. But this is one of the hazards. If you guys remember me saying that all of our stitches, we want to keep them nice and even. It's really normal to have one that's just slightly bigger, one that's slightly smaller, but that's what that's going to look like. It's going to look something like that, right? Where everything else is really nice and even, and then you have one that's just a little funky. It's totally okay. It happens. And it looks like over here, you see right here, you see how I missed a loop or a loop got pulled out somehow? Totally normal. What I would do if this weren't a live workshop is I would actually undo it back to this point right here, and I would fix this. I didn't even know until just now that I had even made this mistake, so don't be shocked if this happens to you, it's totally okay, but I would just undo all those knots and redo it. Now remember, we really only spent, 30 minutes, 45 minutes on all of this, so it's totally okay. If you make that mistake and you have to spend another 30 minutes, no big deal. So one thing I'm doing is I keep flipping it back and forth. All of our loops kind of get pulled around. So I'm just pulling them back into place so I know where those outer loops are. All right, so I've got it right here. Now, remember me saying that keeping it like keeping fluff in something is really nice. And just for time's sake, definitely no need to pull out all that fluff. Now, what we're going to do is the same thing that we did on the other side. We're going to kind of pull this up. And I'm going to find my end. And I'm going to face that towards me. I think it's right here. Yep, here we go. Now, instead of making a new loop, right? If we were making a new loop, we would do that. Okay? Wait, let me make sure you guys can see this. Hold on. If we were making a new loop, we would do this, right? But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way through. Whoop. So on the bottom, I was going under over. But now, because I kind of have this upside down, right? You remember how I flipped it? Instead, what I'm doing is kind of going in reverse direction. Now you are going to need to continue to pull this gently close. Hold on to all of your pieces as you work. And then make sure, so see how our loop right here is really easy for that loop to kind of come apart as you're doing this final step. Make sure you're using your final loop. It's going to start to tilt in a different direction. So it's really easy to accidentally mistake that for a different area, a different loop. So let me show you what I mean. So here's the next piece that we're going to go through. See how this seems like it's the loop right here, but in fact it's this. And the way you would know is because you can pull it back out like so, and you can see that this is that last loop. Now it's starting to kind of take form. And we're just going to keep repeating this sequence. Tightening everything up. Holding everything on top. See how it's starting to come together? One thing that really helped me when I was trying to understand this tutorial, I watched a billion different tutorials from so many different people. But one thing that helped me was watching, once I found one that like made sense, that I'm like, okay, this is correct. You know what you're talking about. I believe you. I watched it over and over again, so you guys don't be afraid to do that. If any step just looks bananas or just doesn't make sense, just go ahead and watch it again. Oh, now we're getting so close to this camera right here. All right, it's noon on the nose. We are finishing. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to just one screen. And we will be done in just a second. There we are. Hello, everyone. This is not going to do us any good because now we're getting so floofy and big and tall that it's like this is just too low. All right, now remember, we're just going around in a circle, pulling all the way through. And we're just going to keep doing this. Until we are nice and tight and have a very small hole. So let me know what you guys thought about this. Let me know what parts you thought were challenging, what parts you thought were easy. If you can see yourself doing this again. Now again, just like this bottom part, once we get to the end, we're just going to tuck our tail in. It's going to get tighter and tighter, obviously, as you continue these loops. And you can kind of squish it around. And then again, you just tuck it in. And now we've got our floof. See how you can see, this is what I was talking about, how you can see some of the puff on the inside, some of the fluff. If you make your stitches nice and tight, then you won't be able to see these, and that's definitely something that I would recommend. But again, you can always undo it and redo it. And then you'll end up with something more like that. And then this is just a nice little cozy pillow that you can throw, on your bed, like in the center. If you have like a little pillowscape, you can put them on your couches. You could give these as a gift. Super cute. This is a really great housewarming gift. You can make them bigger. You can make them smaller. So our next workshop is next Thursday. We're going to make moon macrame wall hangings. I don't know what our other workshops are, but you can find them all at popshopamerica.com. If you click on events in the menu, you'll see them all right there, and I'll see you at the next workshop.